Hey, lady.
Mr. Phillips here?
Well, yes, he is Mrs. Phillips, but he's very...
Thank you. Hello, darling.
Hello, dear. Bunny, I know you're guilty, and I've got to turn you in. It'll probably mean a 2-year stretch.
2 years? Look, I don't think...
But, Jerry, I have something important to tell you.
Not now, sweet. I'm busy. Are you married?
Who, me? No.
Then you wouldn't understand. Scram.
But, Mr. Phillips, a 2-year rap for what I did doesn't
Come on.
seem...
Oh, it's such fun being married to a private detective. You meet such lovely people.
Yes, dear.
Jerry, look, darling, I've just come from our new house. It's wonderful. You're going to love it. It's so much better than living in a hotel room. And it's just the kind of home we've always wanted. It's perfect except for one thing. No telephone.
I know.
But, Jerry, you always arrange things. We can have one, can't we?
No, darling.
But, Jerry, you promised. You said you'd investigate.
Oh, we'll have one eventually. Right now, it's missing.
Oh. Case of the missing telephone. It's exciting. It's a mystery.
No, it's no mystery.
Well, then couldn't you find me just one teeny little telephone?
I did. I found 14.
Wonderful.
Sure. I had a brainstorm. I thought, telephone. We want a telephone. Go where the telephone company keeps them. Well, I thought there weren't any telephones.
They're mostly reclaims, reconditioned. For a long time, we've had to use every telephone we could lay our hands on.
Well, I only want one.
Yes, I'm sure our business office would be glad to give you one if they didn't have a long list of people waiting. A lot of other people want them, too.
Thanks. I'll be back.
Sure.
I went right to the business office and I said, look, I know there are problems here. You have to handle public stuff, you know, health, welfare, safety. But all I want is one. Just one telephone. Thanks. I said I could be very happy with one of those in the stockroom. And she said it wasn't just a telephone we needed.
Well, dear, that's silly. A telephone is just what we need.
She meant it takes more than just this. It's what goes with it.
Oh, all those little wires and things. But, Jerry, we have wires. They're out there already.
Sure. I remembered that. So I went whipping out to the house. There was a telephone man working across the street, and I walked right up to him and I said,
Say, I've got a telephone problem. I wonder if you could straighten me out.
Certainly, I'd be glad to, if I can.
Have you got a minute?
Sure.
I just bought that house over there. Let me show you something.
I'll be right with you.
"3 weeks ago, there was a telephone right there. Now, what I want to know is, if I get another one, couldn't it be hooked to those wires?
Why not?
That's all I wanted to know."
But it wouldn't do you any good.
Oh?
Come outside again. I'll show you why.
Okay.
Now, there's where your line comes out. It runs over here, over to the pole.
Well, what's the matter with that?
That's all. It stops. To do you any good, it'd have to be connected to the cable.
Well, why not connect it there then?
No room.
Well, why not run a bigger cable with more wires in it?
That wouldn't do either. You see, this cable runs back to a much larger cable.
Oh? Where?
A few blocks down the street. Now, back there's a manhole where some cable splicers are working.
Thanks, fella. Hey, fella. Fella,
Could I talk with you a minute? Sure. I think you're the man I'm looking for. I'm trying to get a telephone connected, and I understand that the wires have to run into a cable that runs down there.
We've got wires down there. Plenty of them.
Mind if I look?
Help yourself.
Thanks. Oh, that's a cable.
Sure. The wires are in the cables. Thousands in each one.
Well, all I need is one.
2. Takes 2 for a telephone.
Okay, why can't I have 2?
Well, I think I can explain that. Each of those large cables is like the trunk of a tree that has its roots in the central office. The big cable goes along under the street, and from time to time, smaller cables go out of it like branches. These branches themselves split into still smaller cables, from which the wires go into each house or store that has a telephone.
You mean to say all those wires and those cables are in use?
Well, most of the cables have all they can handle. Of course, we keep a few wires in each cable, in case they might be needed for essential services.
Well, what about the wires for the telephone that was in the house a couple of weeks ago?
Well, as soon as we disconnect a telephone, we take the wires that it used and connect it to the next one on the waiting list. Now, when it gets down to your name, why...
But that'll be months. Not very far away, my wife's sister got a telephone only last week.
Well, that probably was a different cable. There may be wires available in that one.
Well, how about running my wires there?
No, you'd have to run a new cable.
Well, a lot of people around here are waiting for telephones. I'll bet there are enough to make up one of those big cables. Why not put in a new one?
You know what that means?
No idea.
Well, let me show you. Maybe this will give you some idea. That's a cross-section of one.
Boy, that's a lot of wire.
It takes a lot of wire. And the Western Electric people who make it are the same people who make it for the Army and Navy.
Well, I know they use some wire, but it seems...
Some. Take the Army alone. Why, all kinds of field wire and cable. Miles and miles of it. And switchboards. Field telephones. Telephones for tanks. For planes. Thousands and thousands of them. Some planes have as many as 14 telephones in each one. And the Navy. Why, there's enough telephone equipment on a single battleship for a medium-sized city. And we've got the biggest Navy in the world. Even if we had all the wires we needed, we'd still be stymied. There are a lot of wires in a cable. But for something complicated, you ought to see a central office where all these wires come together. You couldn't find a place to hook on an extra pair of wires if you tried.
I took them up on that. I said, okay, I'll do just that. Partly because we need a telephone, and partly because...
Because you love me, don't you, darling?
Well, it was the principle of the thing.
Oh, Jerry, you're kind of cute.
Well, you'd think they'd be able to find room for just one more pair of wires. But, baby, you've never seen anything like the inside of a central office. The telephone man told me that every time you want to make a call, 2,000 switching connections must be made so your telephone can be connected to that other one telephone. You can believe that when you see all the equipment. And wires, countless wires, and every one numbered and having to go to a certain place. And what do you know? I found 2 empty spots. So I turned to the telephone man and said, how about it?
No, I'm sorry. They're used to send current to switchboards in offices, hotels, and so on.
Can't be used for another telephone? Okay, let's add a little piece to the frame.
You can't do it that way. If I handed you a spark plug and said, here's a new automobile, what would you think?
Oh, I see.
You don't start a frame with one telephone. You have to build a whole new unit. And this is only a small part of it. Much smaller in proportion to the telephone system than a spark plug is to an automobile. When you say you want a telephone, you don't mean that's all you want. Let me remind you of a couple of things you want. Anyone you'd like to call right now?
Well, I ought to call my wife and tell her I'll be a little late to dinner. She's at her sister's.
Good. I mean, go ahead.
She has a new number, and I can't think what it is.
Would you like to look at a directory?
No, it isn't in the book yet.
Call information.
That's an idea.
The number is Dunbar 77369.
Dunbar 77369. There you go.
That's one of the things you want with your telephone.
Sure, you have to call information once in a while.
Now you want us to set up a connection between this telephone and the one where your wife is.
Yeah.
When you lift the receiver, An electrical signal tells the equipment in the central office that you want to use the line. A line finder automatically rises, connects with your line, and at the same time selects a sender, which will send your call through the equipment. Or if it's a manual office, a light flashes when you lift the receiver, and the operator does the same thing when she plugs in and says, "Number, please." But this is a dial office. It's the equipment that says, "Number, please," by sending the dial tone to your telephone receiver.
Dunbar, 77369.
As you dial the number, you are first connected to the central office for the other telephone. Every pull of the dial sends electrical pulses, which carry the call through banks of equipment, trunks, cables, and wires, till the telephone for that number is reached.
Line's busy.
Anyway, you know the line isn't free and you can call back in a minute, all because of that busy signal.
It's ringing the number now.
That's two more services. It rings the bell at the number you want, calling the other party to the telephone, and at the same time gives you a signal back here so you know the telephone's ringing.
Here she is. Mary? Is Laura there? Oh. Will you tell her to call me at Dunbar 29900? Thanks, pal. Goodbye. I guess talking over telephone is only a small part of what I want.
There's plenty more. And, of course, these things don't just happen. Every one of these special services requires special mechanical equipment. And, Right, speaking. Mr. Phillips? Yes, of course. It's for you.
Thank you. Hello, baby.
Oh, so that's where you were, in the telephone office.
Yes, and I'm glad I went. You should see those...
Yes, dear. Were they pretty?
Who?
Well, the telephone girls.
Oh, there weren't any girls. Not in the equipment room.
Well, I just wanted to be sure.
Such a trusting little soul.
Never mind. When do I get a telephone? I'm getting the new furniture, all right.
Baby, will you listen to me? A telephone isn't like a piece of furniture. It's no good by itself. You want the service that goes with it. You want to be able to talk to every other telephone that you take it in your pretty head to call.
Well, of course. Why not?
Well, that's what I'm trying to explain. You see, when you add a lot of new telephones, you have to make new wires. You have to make new cables to run to new equipment. And meantime, the scientists of the Bell Telephone Laboratories, who design telephone equipment, and the Western Electric factories that make it, had to stop working for you and me and go to work making war telephones for the infantry and artillery, for tanks, for airplanes, for ships. Not only telephone systems, but all sorts of other things. Radio receivers and microphones, gun directors, secret listening devices. So secret they shouldn't even be mentioned.
Oh, Jerry, come on, you can tell me.
Relax, baby. They wouldn't even tell me.
Well, surely one day the Army and Navy are going to let us have all those telephones, aren't they?
No good. Not the same kind of equipment we use at home.
Oh.
In other words, the telephone people will have to get their factories back where they were and start making up for the war years. And, baby, that's a lot of time to make up, especially with more people wanting telephones than ever before. I'm just beginning to realize what a job like this means. I knew the central offices were loaded, but I had no idea that many of them were operating at more than 100% of what they were designed to do before the war. It's a big job to build all the new equipment they need, and think of the trained manpower it will take to install it. It takes time, a long, long time. Think of 50 million tiny connections, every one having to be right. Not just pretty near, it must be exactly right. And remember, no two offices are alike. Everyone has to be tailor-made to fit its own particular community. That means blueprints by the thousands. Then the wires have to be formed in the factory before they can be connected in the central office. One of the engineers showed me a book of plans. 50 pages of schematic drawings for one central office. And every page represents stacks of blueprints. A single section, about an inch square, requires a blueprint full width, 55 feet long, and filled with detailed drawings. For one little square, mind you. It gives you some idea of the manufacturing and installation that has to be done. And the people who have to do it are just about the first to be turned over to war work and the last to be put back on civilian production. All this takes people, a lot of people. I got the impression that the telephone people have not only scraped the bottom of the barrel to get us through the war, they've used the barrel. Why, to fill all the applications for service recorded on waiting lists during the war would take as much telephone equipment as there is in the city of Chicago. And baby, think what a job it would be to start fresh and build all the wire, all the central offices for a city like that. Why, the job is fantastic. It's tremendous.
Well, don't look so grim, darling. It isn't your fault.
No, but I was just thinking of the enormous rebuilding program all business has to face. And just because a few greedy little guys let a war loose in the world. So you see, darling, your telephone isn't missing. It never existed. There's no mystery about it. And they're doing the best they can. They've turned a lot of somersaults and worked a lot of scientific miracles to fight this war. And we can count on them to turn a few tricks for us as soon as they can.
Well, don't you have any idea how long it's going to be?
But that depends on so many things. It depends on how many people in our neighborhood give up their telephones and how soon. It depends on how filled up our central office is now and is going to be. It depends on all the things I've been...
But, darling, all I want to know is...
Meanwhile, most people are going to have to be patient. And that, my sweet, goes for you and your loving husband.
Jerry, are you trying to get rid of me?
I love you very much, but I have work to do.
Jerry!
Say, lady, do you think that
Oh,
if I...
hello, you still here? Don't tell me you're looking for a telephone, too.
Telephone? Lady, where I'm going, I won't need a telephone for at least 2 years.
Well, you're lucky.
Yeah? That's what you think.